Welcome to episode 4 of Not In, All In. See what we did there? We played with words, not in Hall of Fame, and we're all in talking about things that make us go, eh? And I'm joined by Chris Mouradian, Dave Whitlock, and Paul Lawrence. And panel, we've got two big things to discuss, and then maybe a few other things if we want to sort of like comment on hockey and basketball. But I'm going to begin with this. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Shannon Sharpe.
Oh, geez. Shannon Sharpe, who?
Shannon Sharpe, who be a dumbass.
Yes, CD.
Yes. Chris and I touched on this on episode 3, but there wasn't enough information. We've gotten a little bit more information, and while Shannon can spell NFL, he clearly cannot spell NDA. What are you doing? What? You're 56. Not only are you 56, you're a good-looking 56. You're still built. You look like you look like you have the same physique you had, maybe even bigger than when he was a player. You were about to sign a huge podcast deal. You've just actually, this has probably been the biggest year of his professional career, I could argue. Club Shay Shay has blown up. And here we are talking about a guy who, for probably the last 35, maybe 40 years, has been able to get as much women as he wants and do so easily. He should be the type of person going to the young players saying, stay away from the OnlyFans girls, or if you do, NDA. He got outsmarted by someone who doesn't seem to be all that bright, but knew enough that she wants that bag. And she's going to get it.
Yeah.
One way or the other. Shannon called it a shakedown. He's right. And he was willing to do it for $10 million. Which means, what are you doing? What is it you don't want us to know at this point? That you like kinky shit? Okay. But for someone at this age, with this level of experience, to not know better, as much as I like Shannon Sharpe, and I hope that he gets through this, I really do, because I enjoy his content, unless it's sort of found that a lot of the other allegations might be true. But if he does get through this, I can't have sympathy for a man who should know better. If anyone should know better at this age, at this level, it's Shannon Sharpe. What do you guys think?
We're all speechless. No, Kurt, I think you make a really good point. I mean, he's been in the media long enough, right? He's at a high profile. He's trying to build his career.
Mm-hmm.
You think he would have known better in terms of his brand and the growth he's trying to get in with that to certainly play this crowd very carefully, as you said. Make sure you know who you're associated with. And at this point, like you said, like why not just end it here? Because the story only gets worse on him, right? The longer this gets dragged out, and the more details that come out, and the more nasty. Because this is what will happen. These stories, when he had an opportunity to kind of write this so-called check and be done with it, but he's only digging himself a bigger and bigger media hole. That's got to make a lot of companies wonder, like, well, do we want anything to do with this guy? Because A, he doesn't know how to handle it, and B, when he gets himself in a situation, he doesn't know how to address it, right?
Well, who's advising him right now?
Yeah.
With that 1-minute speech. Or Gabby, as she known on OnlyFans, and we're, okay, yes, we kind of already figured that she was a gold digger. We didn't need that part. But what? So you're demeaning her? Doesn't that demean you? Not played by her. Did all of you listen to the audio that was released?
No.
No.
None of you. Okay. All right.
Don't reenact it for us, please.
I'm not going to reenact it, but part of it is where he says, "When I see you next, I'm going to come and choke you."
Yeah.
But it was said in a weird way, and I say a weird way because it wasn't said like, "When I get over there, I'm going to choke you." It was almost like this was their usual sexual talk. The part of their banter. Because it's like, then she calculatedly said, I don't want to get choked. obviously she knows she's recording this. She's just hit the what she thinks is the jackpot here. I don't know. I've heard threats before. I've never heard one uttered so calmly before, unless it was like Dexter. I don't know. But I mean, I don't. It is just the most bizarre thing, and I wonder if anything else comes out. I don't know. But does he show up to induct his brother?
Yeah.
Does the NFL want him? Well, it's not the NFL. Does the Pro Football Hall of Fame want him there?
Yeah.
I'm sure Sterling does. Regardless, he's going to stand by his brother, as he should.
Well, we got about
3 months or
3 months, yeah,
Yeah,
not
May,
even
June,
3 months.
July.
Yeah. So over these next 3 months, I mean, this thing is obviously gonna continue to be in the news. NFL, as you said, or the Pro Football Hall of Fame, they're gonna want to try to have this to be clean. I mean, you think about it, they may or may not have had a hand in swaying votes away from Jim Tyrer to not have to deal with that this summer.
Or maybe Maxie
So-
Bond more. But yeah. But anyway, go on. Yeah.
But so you would think that they're gonna have some kind of say in it, whether it's telling them no. I don't know if they'll go that far, but I think they just want this thing to be done and over with, so they don't have to worry about it just being brought up just out of being in the orbit of the Sharpe family.
Yeah, I would just say that, yeah, the best thing that they could do right now, Shannon Sharpe can do right now, make this go away as quickly as possible, right? The biggest check possible. ESPN wants it to go, or I guess that's who he works for. And the Hall of Fame was at NFL. Nothing good happens by dragging it out. He got played, chess, checkmate. Just, the more you rebut, the more you drag it out. It's just going to look, it's not going to work for anybody. His career, the NFL, the Hall of Fame, his employers. So that's the way
Sponsors,
to go.
they're gonna want this to go away
Yeah.
if they're gonna stick with them.
Yeah. So, the quicker you can, the more you talk about it, the more you give air to it, the more you give life to it. So let's just call it a day. It'll be a stain on his personality and career. That's already happened. You can't fix that. So just take the L, as they say.
And move on and maybe learn from it.
Yeah. And others learn from it too.
Well,
That you started this segment.
a lot of people rag on his interviewing style. I kind of like it. He's real. I mean, I think sometimes he just, I don't know what he would do without his notes. I don't know that he's always the best prepped, but that's okay. I kind of enjoy that. I'm hoping that he bounces back from this, and I'm hoping that there's nothing really serious in any further allegation. Because if it is rape, then he deserves what's coming to him. And I think we'd all agree on that. If it is. That we don't know.
Yeah, if that's the kind of thing that just continues to drag out, that they want to continue to investigate it for that, then this thing is not going to go away quick, and it's going to just be something that they're just going to have to actively avoid with like Hall of Fame and things like that.
Mhm. Well, we'll move on to one power family to another one in football that dominated all the headlines over the weekend. And I think if anyone, like actually Paul and I, we had a little friendly side bet for, which I guess I won. What was our bet again? Like where Shedeur would fall?
Yeah, we were trying to split
What was the cutoff? I think it was.
we split the first round in half,
Okay, yeah.
and neither one of us got it right, but you were at the end, so technically you won it.
Technically, I won. Yeah, I definitely won. I was
Because
closer.
you didn't go in the first half of the first round.
Well, I thought that he was going to land in Pittsburgh, is what I thought. I think a lot of people thought that too. And we have an unprecedented situation where we've never seen anyone fall like this. It makes the Aaron Rodgers falling to Green Bay, sitting alone in that draft room, look like third grade. No one saw this coming. Certainly they didn't see that coming. I mean, nobody builds themselves their own private draft room to land in the 5th round. What happened? I mean, I got my theories, but I want to open it up to the floor here.
Well, I think there's a lot there's a lot to unpack here, right? That's been going on for a long period of time. really starting with Sanders, Deion building that team in Colorado, and the hype machine had started from day one, and it was all built around the hype. All of the media attention, the podcast, the documentary, all this stuff from day one was built around an image and a hype that was just carried all the way through. And so the mechanism right was there, the strategy was there, the intent was there. And I think Dion and other folks in his group, in his circle, including his kids and his players, all bought into it as a means leading up to one of the biggest outcomes would be we're going to position you guys as best as we can for the NFL draft and make you high profile, very rich millionaires. Now it worked for one of his players, which I don't think anybody really thought that was necessary, but Hunter is certainly well deserving of where he fell, but there was going to have to be some work when it came to Sanders' son as a quarterback. It sort of starts with that. It starts with Deion as a person and everything that he believes, and then it just sort of explodes from there. And I think you have Deion with connections in the league, which can help, but also can backfire, which I think is what's played out here. You have a high profile media former player who can instill fear in teams and in the media who don't want to cross him. That's playing in as a factor as well. And then you get to a situation where, from what we're hearing more and more in recent days, and maybe it won't all come out, but you hear enough of it to realize, you know, Shedeur didn't play in any of the invited, post-college season all-star games. He didn't throw at the combine. He had very limited contact with teams. He did do a very structured, hyped media kind of event with a campus day. And then he started doing the rounds to the invites to go meet with teams, and something went off the rails, whether it was a strategy by the Sanders group to say, listen, make yourself look bad in front of these teams we don't want you playing for that would draft you. So go in and look disinterested, headphones on with me over your shoulders with your music on, and not preparing and being condescending and rude and bringing an entourage with you. All these things that shocked, I think, a lot of the people on these teams who run these visits every year to year. So if that was the strategy, it didn't work because they not only turned off the teams that they didn't want him being drafted by, he obviously word got out, and it is a league where this stuff gets out, whether we chat across these teams, and clearly a lot of teams were turned off. And there's a difference between paying somebody 10 or 20 or even 30 million in guaranteed money versus saying, what is the risk reward with that particular player with skills that are there but don't warrant necessarily really high draft pick, but certainly there somewhere. And the risk reward equation changes quite a bit when he slides further and further down in the draft. And the other reality here is not all 32 teams needed a quarterback. I mean, yeah, I'm a big advocate for teams who think about drafting later in the draft almost every year to build up quarterbacks and development type players, but nobody viewed him as a development quarterback. And that hence really leaves him with a small number of teams who are going to look at him as one of their top draft picks because they have needs, but their needs aren't only quarterbacks. So clearly, some of the teams like the Saints and the Steelers and the Giants, they were turned off by this to the point that not only did they pass on him, they passed on him multiple times and picked other quarterbacks. Look what the Giants did. And they spent a lot of time with him, apparently. Something there didn't go right. And then once that slide starts, it's just a matter of an opportunity. And I'm not even sure whether it was orchestrated to some extent that the Browns would pick him when they had just picked a quarterback around earlier. So there's a little bit of intrigue going on there. But like you say, Kurt, it's just an incredible, fascinating, bizarre, weird way to see a player move through the draft. And then we got Mel Kiper, who still won't stop talking about it because the guy's whole career and his whole professional reputation is aligned with that player. And when you're trashing every other scout and every other team saying they don't get quarterbacks wrong, and then people say, Mel Kiper, look at your history of where you've ranked quarterbacks in the NFL draft, isn't very impressive either. But that just adds to all of that kind of swirling around in terms of media story that is really quite incredible.
Yeah, I'll just touch on a couple of points that Paul made. Yeah, I agree. I think it wasn't a draft where a lot of teams were looking for quarterbacks, and once it got past those first really ripe fruit, there just wasn't a lot of interest, particularly when you put into the context of the drama that was going to add to your clubhouse. You've got an NFL Hall of Famer dad who's coached him his whole career. When's he going to start? You start to get, wherever you sign, the media question is going to be, how does Shedeur do today in practice? Where's he on the depth chart? When's he going to start? Why isn't he playing? Shouldn't he have got that mop up time, et cetera, and so forth. And also it just becomes a distraction to those teams. The Mel Kiper thing was just comical to watch. I mean, as a bystander, because I'm the worst at rating quarterbacks. I thought Ryan Leaf over Peyton Manning. I thought all kinds of guys. I look at the observables, so don't ask me what's going to happen. But what I like about this is this is the second page of the first chapter of this story. What's going to happen. He's got all the chances to prove it. Where's he going to go from here? Some of the stories of somebody got shafted are like a NCAA college football playoff team, like Alabama got shafted out of the playoffs. They're done. You'll never find out how that would have worked out. You think about the NCAA tournament. Oh, this team got left out. You didn't know how they were going to perform. Now he has all the opportunities in front of him to prove the doubters wrong. He can work hard in practice. He can prove that he's not the perception that some of those interviews that Paul described were. So I look forward to how it goes from here. The Browns now, they just bought off on a big chunk of drama. That team is used to drama. They got Deshaun Watson in the room. They've got all kinds of stuff. And those jerseys with the 85 quarterbacks on the back. So if any team is equipped to handle it, it's probably the Browns, not the Steelers, who have been just this methodical, we run things the Steelers way. So I get that part. So I can't wait to see what happens. I hope the kid succeeds. I have nothing against. I hope he proves them wrong, because he was handed this is what happened. So now it's up to you, sir, to figure out how to go from here.
Chris?
Well, I mean, you can always say that the Browns traded up for him, so you'll always have that.
That's right.
But as far as like the Mel Kiper stuff, it kind of reminded me a little bit of what we just said about Shannon Sharpe. All right, you got it wrong. You're not perfect, except that you and everybody else that puts out these ratings before the season or before the draft starts got it wrong. You underestimated how big of a circus he was going to be to whichever team was going to be there. Underrated the fact that there was only 4 teams maybe looking for a potential starting quarterback with a draft that didn't really have more than maybe one potential starting quarterback in it. And just to say, the teams just decided we're going to build our team with the best player possible available at our pick. And if we have to draft a quarterback next year because of it, so be it. We're not going to Kenny Pickett it with like the Steelers did and just force a quarterback in the first round because that's what the consensus says we should do. So he's going to have every opportunity to prove everybody wrong, and more power to him if he does. If you look back at his college career, the very sheltered college career he had with his team and his father coaching him, it wasn't all that impressive. Not a whole lot of things to hang your hat on, and then to basically blow off the interview circuit with the teams that could potentially be your future bosses. He did a lot of things wrong. So he's got to start by coming in at basically ground zero and just start rebuilding his legacy going forward here.
I think
Now, his numbers retired at Colorado. You cannot argue that he was just a legendary figure there that just carried that team to championship after championship. So I'm not sure.
David Bakhtiari has something to say about Colorado and having the numbers retired with success in the league here first. Take care of the guys that came before you start. Anyways,
there was a
I had to
lot.
throw that out there.
Yeah, I like that. There were a lot of people who were comparing this and saying, well, nobody ever said that it was a problem when Archie Manning sort of advised his kids. I think people, to me, that's an awful comparison. Not because it's not obviously a Hall of Fame father, sort of like coaching, sort of like trying to steer his son in a different direction and give the best advice he can. And obviously, that's what Deion did here too. But the difference is Archie was he ever a college coach? Or certainly not a prominent one. And Archie is not Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders is in the stratosphere. Archie Manning isn't. He just isn't. Archie Manning was not going to be interviewed every week or just sort of like asked that question all the time. And it's not, and I think we forget with Deion has more W's in his life than the dictionary. Everywhere he goes, he just wins. He exceeds expectations, even the lofty ones that are always on him. He's now become a top coach in college. I mean, he's in a conversation, that which would easily lead to, well, how would you coach differently? What would you have done differently? And people are going to ask it because it's a great soundbite. Why wouldn't you ask that? It's perfect, like clickbait, as the kids call it. What GM wants to deal with that? What coach wants to deal with that? That adds this whole other level, because I don't think this is an FU to Deion. It's sort of like a bit of fear of what the media can propel Deion to. Because again, the only time he ever lost was 2 toes in life. That's pretty much it. This guy is a winner and defied the odds everywhere he did. And he did it his way. He did it his way. He was flashy. He came off as arrogant, although all his teammates loved him, except I think in the Yankees, like when he started off there. But
Yeah, and I don't think the Archie Manning comparison is very good either for a couple of reasons. One is, from my recollection, the issue there was they really had problems with, at the time, the Chargers organization, and they just didn't think that was the right fit. It wasn't they were looking at a whole bunch of teams or looking to dish a lot of opportunity. Now, of course, we never know what could have happened. We know what happened. He didn't want to go to San Diego, and he ended up, of course, going to the Giants. I don't think there was the same sense of a strategy and one that would continue once Eli joined that team and that Archie would have some influence. Remember, the other context, months ago, there was talk, and it wasn't really dismissed by Deion, that his son and him were going to be a deal together, right? And there was talk that he was going to end up at a team, Dallas or somewhere else, now or in the future, to continue coaching his son. Now, that a lot of that just might have been Deion being Deion, but you've also got to think into these organizations. Is that an also issue of micromanagement we talked about earlier, worrying about, and the Browns certainly still have to be worried about that. Are they going to start getting calls or public comments by Deion and maybe Shedeur about, well, he's not getting enough reps, he's not getting enough coaching time, he's not getting enough preseason exposure. Oh, the season's going on and they're not playing very well and they're not getting him in the games. I mean, any team has to be fearful. Constant media churn and influence about how that's going to play out. And there's a lot of teams that are like, well, we don't view him as our starter. We're not even sure if he's a potential future player for us. And yet, do we want to go through all of that for the next several months? And they just decided to, let's just opt out of all that business. But the thing about the draft, I mean, two of the things that fascinate me about the draft every year is we don't know how it's going to play out. We look at where players might end up, and then things don't, things like this come up. But the point was made earlier. The other important, fascinating outcome about the draft is what happens next. Like I was telling somebody the other day, in this entire draft, right, odds are there are future Hall of Famers somewhere in this draft. Now, none of us are going to try to predict it. But, 15, 20 years from now, there's going to be somebody who was drafted, likely somewhere in this draft, maybe one or more, that landed in a spot and made a career of it and they end up in Canton. We don't know that, but that's the exciting future. And for all of these guys, in many respects, they've been drafted. So it's kind of like a clean slate. I mean, some of them have better opportunities and they see opportunities and fits where they might, because there's a need. Some are going to be immediate starters. But the point is, the slate is clean for all these guys. And if you listen to players who fell in the draft and then recovered from that and were able to have good careers. One of the messages they give to young players in a situation like Shedeur has found himself is, as you were saying earlier, the opportunity is here. It's up to you now to take it. Now, he's going to have some uphill battle. They've got four, maybe five quarterbacks in that room, um, and two veterans are going to compete for the starting job. But that doesn't mean he can't make his path through this year, get himself established, get the coaching, learn the system, learn good habits, become a good professional player, and build a foundation going forward. And they don't hold his rights for a long period of time. And if things don't work out in Cleveland in a few years, one way or another, he may have other opportunities. But what he can't do, right, is go in with the same kind of approach, in the same kind of attitude, because that's just not any rookie's not going to be able to pull that off in front of a team or in front of coaches and management. And the guy who's coming in, no matter his profile and his dad's influence, can do that, being a fifth round draft pick. So it's all there for him, but to take advantage of it. And we're going to have to wait and see. Does he understand that? Does he love the game? Will he put in the time and the effort? Will he listen to coaching that isn't his dad and develop as a player? And the message to him from everybody right now should be congratulations, you're in the NFL. Now go and make the best of this and develop as a great player because the opportunity is given to you. It's not given to every college player. Sorry, things didn't work out, but let's move beyond it. Let's see how he favors, and we're going to find out in the very next few months, right? In this season, we're going to hear how this is working out. If there are ripples publicly in the media and others about grumbling between him and his dad to the Browns about how they're using him or not using him. But he's got every opportunity in the world, and he should grab those reins and run with it and learn from this. We shall see.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that. You made a great point. He may not be auditioning for the Browns job as much as his next job. They've got a stacked room. There's gonna be tons of talent. They may go. Somebody else may wow them. So other franchises are going to look at his behavior. They're going to interview some of the people that are close to that franchise and find out how he behaved when he was the second team or third teamer. And like you said, it can take a few years, but he can do it if he. I think he loves the game. I think he's been around the game. I think he's coachable. We'll see. So yeah, it'll be interesting to watch one of the following storylines of this draft.
Yeah, for the record, I was upset the Saints didn't try to grab him.
Yeah.
I wanted to see if they could sort of like get him when he was still available in the second round. So I'm not. Yes, a 26-year-old rookie quarterback. Those always work. Roger Staubach is that exception to that rule, but yeah. Anyway, so yeah, you took a giant L. It was in front of the world, and what you learn from this is going to shape you, and hopefully it's a lot because we have no reason to cheer against you. Yeah, you're cocky. You came off entitled. You are cocky and entitled, and it's worked for you up until now. What do you do? What do you do different? And there's no reason to think that he can't. And I'm like you, Dave. I'm sort of like, well, why wouldn't I cheer for him to be a success? I haven't heard teammates rip on him, so that's a good sign to me. I guess we'll close off with, is anyone sort of like have one, actually, I'm just going to put you all on the spot here. I'm going to ask you one thing that you've liked most about the NHL playoffs and the NBA playoffs, if you have anything, or one thing that sort of surprised you.
You want to call on somebody or just rapid fire?
Whoever wants to go first.
One of the things I'm looking for at the NHL, I'm looking for, and I'm just pandering to Kirk here, is there going to be a Canadian team that finally steps up and plays to the talent level and brings the cup back to Canada in the first time in 3 decades? The Oilers had the big win last night. Kirk hates the Leafs. I'm not anti-Leafs. I'm anti-Habs because I like the Caps, but I'm interested to see how that plays out because I think there's some good teams in there that could do it, but and of course the Jets, the President's Trophy winners, which is the most important of all trophies in all of sports. It would be a complete disappointment if they don't win it all. So I'm looking for that angle. in addition to the good teams and everything else, and will Ovechkin, get a second cup and that type of thing. So that my first takeaway is watching those series and seeing how some of those Canadian teams perform because they haven't, frankly, in a long time.
Yeah, I can stick with the hockey here and just say that every series has been competitive. Even the Carolina New Jersey series, which is kind of the one that we looked at the beginning and thought that maybe it could be kind of a stinker there because of the injury situation. But everyone's been competitive. The games have been fun. Freaking Oilers. I'm not an Oiler or not a Kings fan, but being another Canadian team fan, out in the West there, not pulling for Edmonton. Greatest thing so far is just was Landeskog scoring the other night. Just everything he had gone through to get back to playing a game, and nearly 3 years since his last actual game, and scoring a goal, and at home the crowd, everything was just perfect for that. And that was really so far the highlight of the playoffs that I've seen.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
playoff hockey is just incredible, and it is an interesting contrast that you have these two major professional sports teams who are having their playoffs at the same time, and they're both a tournament style, right? Which is fascinating comparison. And in the NBA, I've always found the NBA takes a few more rounds before it really gets to where there's a lot of interest. Whereas with hockey, it just seems like right from the first time they drop that puck in that first round. Um, and so seeing some great competitive hockey. Yes, I would like to see a Canadian team have a shot at it. Frankly, the thing I'm looking most forward to in this NHL playoffs is if the Leafs can get to the Stanley Cup, only because our good host here is going to have a complete meltdown.
That's true.
You watch.
That I would
that is
watch.
true. I will have a meltdown that will upset me a lot, but my biggest takeaway is Toronto's got a goalie.
Yeah.
Anthony Stolarz has been, and I don't want to say came out of nowhere, but he's never played this well. And right now he's outplaying my guy Hellebuck.
Yeah, he's not been good.
No, he's not been good. Uh, 3 Vezinas and no, because he's gonna win the Vezina. Hell, he might even win the Hart. There's no runaway person for that. But yeah, and if Winnipeg loses because of goaltending,
Where do you go?
I don't know. I don't know where you stick with Hellebuck, but Winnipeg, when you're a small market team that everyone knows in those polls that they do, those anonymous polls always comes up first and where nobody wants to play or get traded to. I've lived there for a few years. I can understand why that is. I liked Winnipeg, but I mean, who's that guy in Edmonton? Who eventually went to the Hall of Fame, a defenseman who was on the
Wayne Gretzky, no.
no the Oilers.
Coffee.
No, it was in 2005 when they made the Stanley Cup. And then his wife said, "I'm not staying in Edmonton." So he was there for 1 year after signing a big free agent deal. I'm blanking on his name. I can see, it doesn't matter. But Winnipeg's that city. If you want to be a socialite or a wag as they call it, there's not going to be a show called The Wags of Winnipeg. I'm telling you that right now. It's not going to happen. You're more likely to. Oh, here's a show I'll pitch. The Wags of Nunavut. Huh? Huh? There we go. It'll give
Well, and hot
hot
goaltending wins championships. I mean, you
absolutely.
see it, and sometimes it comes out of relatively nowhere. And you think about the other again major pro sports. I mean, occasionally, yeah, we're going to see an NFL team where maybe it's a quarterback, maybe it's a running back that gets hot in the playoffs, and or a defense just takes that team all the way. You see it certainly in baseball when they get to the World Series, a guy will get hot or cold, and that can make the difference. But clearly in hockey, when at this such a competitive level and how closely matched, how talented so many of these teams are, that a hot goaltender can really make a huge, huge difference. Or vice versa. And you run into an issue with goaltending, you don't have a fallback, and then you're kind of spiraling trying to make up that difference, which is very, very difficult to try to outscore good playoff teams and good goalies because you don't have one.
Yeah,
I believe the defenseman you were talking about was Chris Pronger, by the way, from what I could tell.
that's the one. Yeah. So it was like, yeah, we went there one year. It's like, wife said, we're not doing that. I've also spent a lot of time at Edmonton too. Again, we're not going to see the Real Housewives of Edmonton either. I did meet one
Well,
of the
I got to run because, like Bill Belichick, my wife is behind me and telling me that I have to get off camera. All right, I had to slip that in.
All good.
Well played.
I'm dressed a little better than Bill. I tried. No ripped Navy shirt. What is it with that guy? He's
Yeah,
kind
but I
of
mean, clearly it
real.
works for him because
It's
look
weird.
who he pulled. And I'll bet you she's not on OnlyFans because Bill's smart.
Is he?
I would think so. And it can be,
Football wise, maybe.
it's for that funny personality. He just makes her laugh all the time, all day.
I'm sure that's what it is. It's going to keep that sustained, given the 50 years of an age difference between the two of them.
I don't know what you talk about all day. I really don't know.
It's gone weird. I mean, it's just bizarre.
Silly me being monogamous for 20 years, huh? Works for me. There you go. Any more final comments? I guess none of us picked anything on basketball, huh?
Oh, I mean, I'll just throw out there the Bucks are done, and may not be just this year. They may be done going forward here because
Yep.
there's no way you can replace a player like that without any kind of they don't have anything. There is no off ramp here. They're going to crash and burn, and Giannis will be playing somewhere else, and you're never going to get the value for him that he's worth.
Also, props I think to Anthony Edwards. We don't know how that's going to go like further. I don't think anyone had Minnesota leading 3-1 at this point, which is where they are now. Be a lot of overreactions if the Lakers are bounced. Just give them more time to sort of play together. They haven't been when does it ever happen when stars actually coexist at the same like in the first year? I mean, even LeBron didn't win the first year in Miami. And on paper, they should have got shellacked. They should have shellacked Dallas, but they didn't. So we'll see. I mean, it's sort of fascinating how uninteresting the NBA is in comparison, and I think it's going to show in a lot of the ratings moving forward. I really, really do.
Well, and even bigger than that, I mean, we've seen it throughout the season, increasing the rate. A lot of criticism of the play, the flow of play, the quality of play, the way that game is being contested. It's gotten a lot of negative attention, and that's spilled right into the playoffs, and that can't help. What you're saying in terms of not drawing attention in if the matchups aren't working, if you're not seeing the competitive, if there aren't any stories behind it, and there's already this narrative about, the poor quality of play, that's just not going to help you build attention during a playoff run, unless you end up at some point, right, with a Final Four or a championship with two very high profile teams with some history to be made or something of that nature that kind of creates a whole new narrative. I think the NBA is really struggling now on a narrative which is negative, that the play is just not very good and people just don't want to watch it. And this is coming from NBA fans who are saying this.
And I'll pile on to that. There's just so much focus on the refereeing. It's like every game, it's not who made what shot or what. It's like what foul wasn't called, what thing did they mess up, and that should have been. And this guy gets the calls, that guy, and it becomes a distraction. Every sport, it becomes a distraction, but NBA just seems magnified to where the only thing people want, not the only thing, but most of what people want to talk about is how the refs, blew it for one team A or team B. And it takes away from, to Paul's point, what could be some great play, some great finishes. Refereeing calls are just part of sports, but people have gotten hyper focused on it.
Well, let's say we get the number ones go against each other, which is certainly possible. I mean, I think Boston's going to overtake Cleveland, but let's say it's Cleveland versus OKC. Is that marketable anywhere? Shea, unless people are ready to take Shea as the face of the league, which I don't see why they couldn't.
They want to see Celtics, Lakers, or Golden State and Knicks.
New York.
Yeah. Right, yeah. Because I don't know how you're going to sell And I like Donovan Mitchell a lot. Obviously, I love SGA, Canadian. I have to, but is they've tried so hard. The NBA's done such a great job at making stars in the league until recently, and I don't know. And maybe it's because a lot of them are European.
I think they're in that difficult transition, right, of the league, of looking for the iconic franchise, the iconic teams, players, and superstars, and they're in that transition. And until someone steps up, and maybe it's just playoffs, I don't know, of a team or a player that can sort of galvanize that, they're going to struggle again. It all comes to creating a media and attraction story that will bring viewers back in. And yeah, it's a great comment, whether it's the officiating, the lack of superstars, not the competitive nature of the game, complaining about the play. It's a lot of negative narratives to the NBA playoffs. And at some point, if the league really wants to succeed, it has to flip the switch. I don't know whether it's this year that transition happens, but they're going to have to get there to build the league. The next generation of great players are going to have to emerge.
Think about this, NBA. One person on this panel is from deep in the heart of Texas, and he's talking about hockey. I think
I watch way more hockey than
right
basketball,
there.
especially in these rounds. Like Paul said, that it really doesn't get going at least until the next round, if not the Final Four.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think with that, it brings us to a close. When we're doing this again, nobody knows. I wasn't going for a rhyme, it just sort of happened. As I close every show, wherever you are, wherever it may be, make today count because it never comes again. Unless the Buddhists are right and you come back as a dishcloth or something. I don't know. My father-in-law's a Buddhist. Doesn't like me, though. But anyway, that's another story. Tally ho.
See you guys.